Hello, everybody, and we're joined by, I must say, the Gooner Gal, the NOLA Gooners, one of the main ladies in America, massive Arsenal fan, Tiffany Campo. How are you, Tiffany?
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
Well,
Thanks
listen,
for inviting me.
it's great that I could get you on. I know you're a member of the Krewe of Arsenal. You're a member of NOLA Gooners. You're an events board member of Arsenal America. And you're the creator of Gooner Gals. Could you tell us a little bit about, well, you do plenty. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
It makes me sound so busy.
Well,
I also have a full-time job and 2 kids, if that makes any difference.
wow.
So with events for Arsenal America, I get to plan the road trip when we call it the road trip when we come over to the Emirates each year. And, there's usually around 60 people that come over with us. So it's a lot of fun. And for a lot of people who come with us, it's the first time that they've been able to make that pilgrimage. And it's a big deal for them.
I missed you the last time, didn't I?
You did.
Yeah, I missed you the last time. And I'm gutted. But well, obviously, once all this dies down and you could travel again, I'll have to make sure I come and join you ladies. I just missed you. I was so gutted about it.
We spend enough time at the pins. You'd think that we would just run into you at some point, but
that's right. I think the problem is because I don't live in London anymore. I lived in Manchester for 20 odd years. So, that's probably why. So you have to catch me at the right time. I know you do so much for Gooner Gals and the NOLA Gooners, etc. Could you tell us a little bit of is there any projects that you're working on now? I know it's a difficult time, or was there any projects you're working on before?
So Gooner Gals, just to take that back a step, Gooner Gals kind of started with me and a group of local girls having our sort of side chat from the bigger chat room that was happening locally. Those conversations can move so fast, and when we would want to stop and really talk about something, any comment we made was just gone. It was over. And skipped right past it. So we started our own little group, and I'm fond of, early 20th century lingo sometimes, and I like gals.
Yeah.
And so I called us Gooner Gals for this group. And then a couple of years later, I thought, if we're having these side groups, football is not always the most inclusive place for women.
Yeah.
And there have to be other women who are also having these conversations. And so I started a group aimed at Gooner Gals, and we pretty quickly had almost 600 members.
Wow.
So we link up when we travel. It makes it more safe to travel when you know other women who are there if you're traveling alone. Yeah. We go to each other's branches. On this side, we've had plenty of single Gooner Gals come over to London with us. And we do a lot of, we do fundraising when it's appropriate. So we don't do it just to do it. We don't do it as a rule. The first year we did a cervical cancer fundraiser, and we were able to do really well with that. But since then, there have been really personal things that have popped up. We helped raise money for the Houston floods a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Most recently, there was a girls soccer team. You probably saw some of the stuff that I posted on Twitter. That was at the El Paso Walmart when the shooting happened, and lost several of their coaches and family members.
Yeah.
And it was super traumatic. And when we heard that they were raising money for kits and for tournament fees, we just kind of dove in. And then one of their local El Paso football players got behind it. And then the next thing you knew, Roma was retweeting it, and there was a lot of people that got behind it, and we were able to raise over $30,000 for them in 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
So we do stuff that matters. Right now we're all sort of supporting we have one friend who, if not for customizing things, she wouldn't have much of a job, and she started doing those masks that you're seeing everywhere, and everybody's kind of helping her out. It's not to take anything away from the club.
No,
when people make their own creative attempts at things, but this is something that was needed and that she was able to supply in a way for us to support her. So
no, that's fantastic. And if there's in any way, shape or form the football family, especially the Gooner family, can help, just let us know. You know, look, you're probably better at it than I am how to make these things work, Tiff. You know,
they really do. You know, they dive in. The El Paso thing, just as an example, was really spread around everywhere, all corners of the world,
yeah,
based on, you know, the Arsenal family. And it never ceases to amaze me how we all show up for each other.
fantastic. Right. Well, listen, I'm excited to get going because, listen, I just want to get stuck in because I want to know. I want to know so much because, you know, the US kind of side of things always fascinated me because you're such a far way away, but you're all very knowledgeable. So this is why it's called Who Are You? We want to know about you now, Tiffany.
Right. And am I
Okay.
the first American?
Yes, you are. Yeah, so you're
pretty excited about
it's
that.
your debut. You're the first. You're the first. You're the first.
I'll try not to let them all down.
No, you're gonna do just fine. So Tiffany, how did you become a Gooner, Gooner gal? How did you?
So mine goes back about 14 years. We had a Setanta sports box in the house, and that was the only way that you could see matches from anywhere outside of the US.
Yeah.
And my husband and some of his friends sort of latched on to Premier League.
Yeah.
And everybody always loves how Americans say Premier League. It's Premier League.
Premier
I think.
League, yeah.
Yeah. And so I found that I wasn't just like sitting in to watch with them as like an activity. I really enjoyed it. And I've always liked soccer. And so that wasn't a big shock, but I really enjoyed it. And so for me, I don't like things that other people just like. Yeah. And my entire background is in research. And so I immediately sort of looked into things about the teams, not just watching them and how they played and whether or not I felt like I could relate to their sort of charisma, but are they built on a solid foundation? You know, is this something I can really get behind and stay behind? Because I'm certainly not going to jump ship. And I think we do know a bit about being hardcore followers, just because like our NFL teams here are very regional, right? Yes. So like if you live anywhere near New Orleans, you are a Saints fan, anywhere in the state, anywhere directly outside of here. And it's, you know, live or die every Sunday or Monday Night Football. But so we were sort of missing that connection with supporters overseas, but we were finding these things for ourselves, and that actually requires a lot more homework. Yeah. And so I sort of, you know, I knew I was drawn to Arsenal. My husband was an Arsenal supporter. And so, of course, I sort of teasingly told him that, you know, there was really only 2 teams in the entire league that I could get behind. And I just thought I was going to have to be an Everton supporter.
Hey, listen, hey, do you know what, Tiffany? I like your style. I like your style.
And he just kind of went.
He looked at you. That's funny.
Like, I'm kidding. And so, yes, I've always had a soft spot for Everton, but there was just no beating that sort of grip that Arsenal had pretty early on. And then, you know, it became like bringing up our boys with that. Like my kids are 17 and 20. Yeah. And so you think 14 years ago, you know, they were really coming into us watching football together, and it became this sort of legacy thing that you experience overseas that you don't really have here. But as it grows here, we're bringing our kids into it. We're bringing other family members in.
Yeah. Tiffany, my boys are 17 and 20.
Stop! Oh, that's really fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask you the months of the birthdays, because if their months are the same, it's
September and June.
Well, my eldest is December and my youngest is February. So,
okay.
Yeah. Whoa. Tell you, that's.
Do you know, so one of the boys was taking Taekwondo at some point, and one of the parents, she and I got on really well, and it turned out our kids were both born on the exact same days.
No way.
Same day.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Weird things, right?
That's crazy. So, Tiffany, I'm going to change the next question, because obviously 14 years ago, Arsenal was still at the Emirates. But have you seen a lot of the games that were at Highbury? And how does Highbury make you feel? Because I'm sure you've heard all the narrative, you know, we've left our spiritual home to go to the Emirates and all that kind of thing.
It makes me feel jealous. a little, a little nostalgic for something I didn't ever have, I guess. So of course I watched a lot of the matches from Highbury. So when I came in was the end of Thierry Henry.
Yeah.
And so of course his heyday
Yeah.
was lived out at Highbury. And I'll never forget, on our first trip to London, we were leaving. We had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. We woke up in the hotel and we turned the TV on, and it was I don't know, ITV or BBC was playing Thierry Henry's best goals, and it was like 3 hours or something. And we were just like, they don't want us to leave.
Yeah.
We're supposed to stay here. So no, I mean, I've toured the ground.
And what, as it is, as the apartments?
Yeah, well,
Right,
we had a
yeah.
friend on one of the last tours that stayed in one of the apartments. So
Right.
we were able to go there. And then prior to that, we were able to just go in and tour the ground. They're not
Right.
all that great with security.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And we went into the front and got pictures of that main
Marble hall, the
entryway
marble halls and stuff.
Yeah. So it means something to us because we cared a lot about the team's history before we were, ever able to make a match. It was something we were doing every day without ever being there. So I think every piece of it matters and sort of comes together for us in terms of putting together this sort of portfolio of how we feel about this team that we follow.
Yeah. So who was your favorite player back then, and who was your favorite player now? Or
Okay. So I had a lot of trouble thinking about that one when you sent it to me because I came in at the end of Thierry Henry, like I said. And so he was absolutely my favorite. And that wasn't even like his strongest point. He was on his way out at this point. But he still just had such a presence on the pitch. There was this camaraderie with the club and with the supporters. And I just ate that up. That there was just something about the dynamic side of him that really spoke to me. And then I think there have been several iterations since then that I've really loved. I loved Santi Cazorla.
Oh, yeah.
How do you not? I loved Aaron Ramsey, saw him when he first came in, obviously, and then followed him through and was absolutely gutted when he left.
Yeah.
I really like Ozil. I think he catches a lot of hell.
Yes.
But I think some of that hell has been useful in highlighting other things that were going on with the team.
Yeah.
So, he bears that burden for us, I think.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's not a bad trio of players to follow, I must say. Obviously, the first one back then was Thierry Henry. He was the icon, wasn't he? He was unbelievable. Record goal scorer and everything. But Santi is a legend. I'd love to see him come back, Tiffany, if I'm honest.
I would too. I really would too. And then even if it's just to get him in before he fully retires, so he retires with Arsenal.
Or even as a coach.
Even if it's a gesture, but I would. Oh, absolutely.
Even as a coach,
who can rouse a room better than that man? And then I have been fortunate to meet other older players who I didn't get to see play because I do the tour. I meet or run into Charlie George quite a lot.
He's a lovely guy. He's a lovely guy.
Such a character. And so, I always thought, well, I do these tours and I arrange these things and I see him in the stadium several times during each of these trips. And then the last time I was there, Paul at Highbury said, would you do me a favor and bring him his pie? I said, yeah, sure. We were going straight there. So I brought him his pie and he said, oh, somebody brought me a pie. And he looked up at me and he says, oh, you're here more than I am. Well, for somebody who's not a season ticket holder and doesn't live on that side,
No, but listen, your players are fantastic. So, what's a match day experience like for you in America, in New Orleans? How does it pan out? What time does it start? Let's get that across first.
So sometimes it starts at 6 a.m.
Right.
Sometimes it starts at night. The favored Saturday 3 p.m. matches. Well, that for us is the favored 9 a.m. matches. And it's usually, we roll out of bed and go down to the pub. We have a pub that is sort of the football pub in town, and so they everybody goes there, which is really unlike anything you see in the UK. Right? There are no mixed pubs. There's no away, section
none of
to
that.
anything.
No.
But for us, there's a huge like Premier League family there, which is really strange. We don't all like each other.
No, of course.
We downright loathe each other and each other's teams on some occasions.
Yeah.
But it's Finn McCool's and it's all Finn's family. So we go down and, you know, if you start drinking at 6 or if you start drinking at 9, and that's how it goes. And then, you know, everybody's there. There's, you know, 40 or 50 people there to watch the match together. And, you know, if they win, we might spend the day with those people. And if they don't win, then we might go home and sleep it off and start over.
Start over again. Yeah. A little later. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, when we're over there, it's probably the same as what everyone else does. You know, we might start at the Tully or the 12 Pins and then go to the supporters clubhouse and then go to the match and then go back to the supporters clubhouse and then get home way too late and make a full day of it. You know,
no, you have to, especially if you're bringing people with you, you have to make the day of it, get the full Arsenal experience. I think that's really important. So what's your thoughts on the Arsene Wenger era and the way it ended? Because, you know, again, just getting your thoughts, you're someone who, I'd love to hear your explanation on it. What your thoughts are.
I came in to Arsene Wenger and he was really the only boss that I knew for a really long time. So the way that he left was tragic to me, to be honest. I thought he deserved much better. If they were going to push him out or, you know, work his way out of the contract that was in place, then it should have been done before this, you know, Wenger out crew pulled their voices together. I absolutely hated that. I also hated that we were losing under him at the end. I don't know. There are so many things that I just thought he deserved better, but I also think there's Wenger football, and then there's maybe some things that were changing with the game, and perhaps especially within the same club, he wasn't changing his game, and football was kind of moving on without us.
Tiff, can I ask you this? I look at it and I think to myself, I think it's a combination, because there's a couple of other teams who all of a sudden got new ownership, who got a lot of injection of money, and they started to invest in their squads and they became stronger. And we didn't have that. Obviously, we left our spiritual home and went to the Emirates, and he was making do. But every year we kind of got a little weaker, and every year they got stronger, and it just came to a tipping point where they overcame us, and we just didn't have it. Us after 20 years of qualifying, you know, for the Champions League consecutively, he just couldn't do it anymore.
Well, and look, we've got, you know, a penny pinching American who owns the club, and they've got oligarchs who are pouring money into whatever they need for these teams. I mean,
we're going to get onto Kroenke. We're going to get onto the owner later.
No, not even to get into that. But City has an entire first team on their bench.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and we've never been stacked that way.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate. But the way it ended, I thought Arsene Wenger, I think do you remember after we beat Chelsea in the FA Cup final?
Yep.
And he was saying that, he kept saying before then that he's going to make his decision at the end of the season, what he's going to do. And then after that, he signed another 2-year deal. I think that was the perfect time for him to leave. You know, he just won another trophy. Thanks, Arsenal. You know, you've been great for me, but I'm going to leave. But the fact that he signed that next contract, and then the following season didn't go so great. No. You know, it leaves him there to be shot at. What's your thought?
I don't think anybody goes without fault. I think, you know, he was on a high point and maybe reliving some things for himself and wanted to see if he could carry through with that again. But I think you're right. I think, you know, that would have been the time to take a bow. I don't know where that would have left us, considering the sort of scrambling that we did when he did leave. But I think that the program was run differently, and I think that there's a lot of things that we did lose with him leaving, aside from just, you know, what was happening with the team at the time. You know, the club was run a bit differently under him, and some of those things I think would be useful to bring back.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and excite you a little bit now. Seriously. So if you could tell me, Tiffany, what are the best experiences you've had as a Gooner Gal?
2014 FA Cup win.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Because you have to think at that point, I had been watching since like 2006, 2005.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anything worth writing home about at that
Well,
point. So it was
were
kind of
you the
baptism.
jinx? Were you the jinx, you know?
No, but it was, you know what? It was kind of baptism by fire, right? Like I came in, and if I was going to love this team, I had to love them with all the shtick that I was going to get with it,
Yes.
because nothing exciting happened for quite a while. And I just remember being in the pub when that match finished, and somebody jumped and a beer hit the fan, and the whole place went into showers, and it was just, unbelievable. And that was a huge one. That was a huge one for me. And then shortly after that, we were finally able to make our first trip overseas.
Right.
And so we were able to see a match while we were there. And
Was it a win?
just yes. Well, it was okay. It was a BS match. It was the Emirates Cup.
Listen, it don't matter. A win's a win.
We could only get away for the summer.
Yeah.
And you obviously can't get any league football during the summer, but it was still such a pilgrimage for us, and it was such a big moment. And then that was the one where Sanogo scored 4 times in one match.
Wow,
and,
yes.
And so it was a lot of fun too. There's less pressure on those matches. We're coming off of an FA Cup win and a decent season, and then rolling right into seeing just goofiness at the Emirates Cup. But it was a lot of fun, and that was a big deal for me. And then the third one would be I get to have it every year because we have Gooner Gras here.
Yes.
And people come from all over the world, and it's a big Gooner family reunion, and we welcome in new people every time, and it's become this kind of global thing, and it's really fun. And I'm on the committee that puts it together.
Fantastic.
And so it's a lot of work, but every time that we're like exhausted and we're building up to it, and then all these people come in from everywhere, and we're all just here centered on Arsenal.
Yeah.
We all just kind of sit back and go like, yeah, we're gonna do this.
It's
again.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
How many people go to Gooner Gras? Because for people who are going to be watching this, a lot of people would have seen it. They've seen footage, but they don't know.
So years ago, we started with like 40 people.
Right.
Who would come in from around the country, and just come do some goofy stuff, go to a Mardi Gras parade with us. Now we have about 300.
Right.
And we kind of cap it at that. So for people who are interested, I would say that if dates are announced, obviously right now, no one knows what January, February is going to look like.
Yeah.
But if dates are announced, I would say jump in as quick as you can, because we kind of have to cap it at that in order to keep the best locations that we have. We have a huge balcony over the Mardi Gras parade.
Fantastic.
If we get too many more people, we lose that space. So it's a lot of fun. It's just so much. We crown a king and queen each year.
It sounds a lot of fun. Listen, everything I've seen about it is superb. It has been superb.
Well, and it's based on fundraising. So we like this year, the money goes to St. Baldrick's for research for childhood cancers. And we have also supported a local youth football team.
Right.
So there's always kids running, we get involved with kids athletics with the way that we donate. It's always about kids in one way or another. And so we have a huge raffle, and everybody leaves with lots of awesome Arsenal stuff, and we give the money to charity. So it's a feel-good event.
Fantastic. So, Tiffany, how big does social media play in connecting you with Gooners around the world? Because obviously you're not in England, so you're not that connected here. So what does social media do for the likes of yourself and the organizations
I would say that the only email correspondence anymore is with the supporters clubhouse, because they don't really use a lot of social media. But and then with the club, obviously, we do connect with them directly whenever we're making plans and things. But as far as connecting, when connecting with other supporters, I think it's huge. I don't know that it would have the global reach that it does without, not that people wouldn't be Arsenal supporters, but just this collective of Arsenal supporters would not exist. When the guys started watching it, and we had this Tanta box and this, that, and the other, they had big soccer.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys who know each other now still know each other from big soccer.
From big soccer.
And that was, a series of chat rooms where people could talk about all of the different things with their teams. Now I feel like it's the same thing. It's a bit more compartmentalized with social media, because you've got Twitter and Instagram, but on Facebook you've got the pages and then the groups and then the individual chats. But I would know all of the local people, but outreach for coming together, as Arsenal America or Gooner Gals, for example, wouldn't exist without social media. So I think as much as social media can be demonized, there's a reason that we're all still plugged in.
Yeah, very true.
And that it makes us all more accessible to each other. And I think in terms of, I'm talking to Kevin Campbell. Like, that wouldn't be happening.
I'm talking to Tiffany Campo. That wouldn't be happening without obviously knowing each other from Twitter and connecting that way. Obviously, I've got to give a shout out to the Princess Gooner and Sophie Soccer Diva, who they hold that flag for ladies, Lady Gooners, just like yourself. It's amazing.
Sophie came and met up with us when we were in Los Angeles last summer for the match. She came down from the Ivory Tower media room and watched the match with us. And we sent you guys ridiculous videos, I think. And then, Amanda came and met up with us at the Tollington when we were there year before last. And they're just awesome people. They're very welcoming. They're very excited for everybody to love their club. And that definitely big flag bearers for sure.
Yeah, definitely. They're lovely people. So we're going to get to something a little bit dicey. We have to have something a little bit dicey. What's your thoughts on Stan Kroenke's ownership? Because obviously you're American. You probably know more about him than all of us in England.
Stan Kroenke, from an American perspective, is exactly who you think he is. My problem with the Kroenkes is that, there are people who work for Arsenal who were supporters of the team their whole lives, and then they followed their dream to work for the team or play for the team. And it's fulfilling for them. I wish that I thought the Kroenkes were supporters. I wish that it felt like they were supporters first and owners second, or even tied. But it feels like a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of the supporters of their teams on the US side feel the same way about the ownership here. And I just don't know if they sort of get sports and supporters in the way that it would be very useful for all of us. Like, I'm thrilled that the We Care Do You campaign sort of worked, but it's embarrassing that it had to.
Yeah. I look at the Kroenkes and I just think American sports, obviously there's different cities and some cities are more fanatical than others, but football's a different dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
English football is different,
And I don't, he had the money and he wanted the team, but I also don't understand what the hell the board was thinking. This was all allowed in the last few years where, I think anybody with a voice was sort of saying, no, this is not a good idea. You don't want a majority owner who does not understand what's going on. We had one owner who was saying it'll absolutely never happen. And then I think he even bent in August of 2018. So this is, I feel like what happens when you just have like sole ownership and there's no one to sort of do the checks and balances. And it's run so much differently than it was, when we had Arsene Wenger, like say early to mid time of the Wenger era, he had a lot more say in who we bought. He was very vocal about who he wanted and what he needed on the pitch. And that's my understanding is that's not really happening in the same way anymore. I read that Guardian article yesterday from Unai Emery, and he talked about that there are two people, Raul and whoever above him, who called the shots on the money, and all that he could do was sort of suggest what was needed on the pitch. And to me, that's ass backwards.
Yeah, it is, Tiffany. But you see, the problem with Unai Emery, he wasn't the manager; he was the coach.
Right.
So when you come in as the coach, the dynamic's different. Arsene Wenger was the manager, and when you're the manager, you've got to manage. You've got to manage these Raul and Vinay and all. That's what you've got to do. You can't let them just give you what they want. You've got to work with them in order to get it. But I think Unai Emery was so delighted to take the job that he just accepted, yeah, I'll be coach, not a problem. And then when it came down to it, it was a huge job for him. He started off doing well, of course he did. But when it came,
we were putting up numbers each week, right? 21, 22.
Yeah, everybody was, it was brilliant. Yeah. But when it actually came down to the crux, going for that Champions League spot and going for the Europa League final, we failed miserably, didn't we? We failed miserably. And that was testimony to his man management. I actually interviewed him after Arsenal played Everton at Goodison. And he played a weakened team, if you remember, and we lost the game 1-0. And I interviewed him after the game, and I wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed. I didn't say nothing because I don't want to. It's Arsenal, and I don't want to speak ill of anybody when he was manager. But he's not manager anymore, or coach, should I say? And I wasn't impressed.
I think he unfortunately comes across as sort of weak. And when you have bold personalities in your locker room, and then when you lose all of the captains who were previously able to sort of mitigate those bold personalities in the locker room, you have to have something to fall back on. And I just don't think he did. I think he was very excited to be there and couldn't have thought in a million years that things were going to go bad because he was so optimistic. Yeah. Seems like a very, very nice guy, but doesn't really know how to push back.
Yeah.
I don't
think you're right.
We have that. I don't think we have that problem anymore. I think we have a lot of pushback now.
Well, I'm going to get onto the new guy because what's your thoughts on Mikel Arteta? And are you positive? Because I think he's a breath of fresh air right now. Although he's young and he's learning on the job.
But he learned under Arsene Wenger and he learned under Pep. I mean, I'll take those coaches, those teachers any day. I think that he's very firm in what he expects. I think that he holds them to that. This was home for him.
Yes.
And so I don't think that he came into such an adjustment that someone else might have. He was sort of coming back. And I think that because he is incredibly intelligent and had such a, strong skill set when he was there, I think he off the top was respected by many of the players who were already there. And, the previous coach didn't have, the benefit of that. I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think that he's realistic in that if he sees that something isn't happening, then that's what they're going to train for. Mm-hmm. And that's how we're going to develop our game. I don't think he sees it as we're going to play it one way and that way is going to work. And if it doesn't, then it was the other team and not the way that we played. He takes full responsibility, and I'm very excited to see what comes when football comes back to life.
I mean, he's even making some of the players who were bad better.
Yeah,
that's the sign of a good manager, coach.
Yeah, and just the way that. Some of them have really gotten behind him because they did know him, and because even if they didn't, this sort of true self that he's shown, he just doesn't seem to have a fake bone in his body. Yeah. And I think that he comes in and this is who he is, and this is, like I said, this is what he expects, and he holds them to it. And I think that that's really important. You can't threaten and not do anything.
That's right.
You can't suggest but not trained to it. And I get the impression from him that he's very straightforward with what they're going to do if they want to play for him.
I'm gonna add a little bit on now, Tiffany.
Yeah.
How many players would you recruit if you were there?
What's my budget?
The problem is we haven't got a budget.
Ever.
Kroenke's give us no budget, so we got to move and shape. We got to sell players.
I would.
All right, your 2 signings you'd make.
Well, I think we need another striker. Obviously, I love Aubameyang. I love Lacazette, but we need another Aubameyang. We need another Kevin Campbell and Ian Wright. We need something a bit stronger at the front. And then we need somebody who can kind of lead the defense better. I feel like Leno does an awful freaking lot for this team, more so than he should. And so I would definitely love to see a stronger defender. And I will say that I think we've got that with David Luiz, but he needed time.
Yeah.
I think he definitely has the personality for pushing everybody around back there and making sure that they're doing what they ought to be doing. But if we could have one more of him or someone stronger, I would be good with that.
I think obviously we signed Saliba last season, didn't we? And Saliba can come back now. He's an Arsenal player now. So let's just say we've got him.
Okay.
So you have one more choice. Where do you go from there? We got Saliba and Luiz, or Saliba and another. I like Partey in midfield.
Yeah.
We need that tough midfielder who can protect the back four. We haven't really had it.
We need a midfielder who can hold it together. So, I think that there have been times that under the right partnerships, Granit Xhaka has worked really well. But I think that he still struggles with maintaining his form when he gets frustrated.
Yeah.
So I think that, if there was a midfielder who had some real leadership and was really, really consistently skilled and not just had a good day, that would make it an entirely different team for us.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, Tiffany, we're at the last question already. Can you believe it? It's gone so quick.
Okay.
So you have three choices, 3 things to make the Arsenal better. What would you do? What would you implement?
Well, first of all, I would implement safe standing. I think that obviously that's been a huge part of football from the beginning. I think there are safe ways to do it. It's been proven that there are safe ways to do it. And I think that, is this a library? Anybody who's been there knows that the atmosphere can be very strong, but it can also be very lax. And I think that's what it's missing. You need people who are, raring and ready to go and standing at all times. And it's what we do in the pubs.
That's right.
Like who's sitting down during a tight game in the pub? So that's 1. 2 would be untying the purse strings for our manager and letting him make more of the decisions with regards to that. I think that would be, you'd have to probably take it from someone's cold, dead hands. But
put a number on it. Put a number on it, Tiffany. Come on. How much would you want in the coffers?
All of it, $1 billion.
Yeah.
$1 billion. Put it in there and say, it's got to last X amount of years. But I think that if you're not spending the money, and here's what bugs me. We have these things where like everybody says, oh, well, they're not making any changes and they're not spending the money, so we're not going to matches anymore, right? Like we're going to boycott it. But they're not making their money from the supporters. They're making their money from television. They're making their money from sponsorships. And the way you get the prime television spots is by your place on the table and by your performance. Mm-hmm. And those go hand in hand with having the right players on the pitch. So if you want the TV money and you want the sponsorship money, then you have to spend the money to win the games.
That's right.
So I think that's a big thing. And then what was the other thing?
You got one more.
And then my last one was just to hang on to the homegrowns a little longer. I loved Jack Wilshere screaming, "What do you think of Tottenham?" from the top of a float.
I think we all did, Tiffany.
I absolutely adored, as I said, Ramsey. And I understand that in some cases those people had to go, but they weren't going to make that much more money, and they really weren't going to play that much more for these other. I mean, Ramsey was still decent, but Wilshere wasn't really going to play much more, and he was prone with injuries. But I think that for the atmosphere and for the enthusiasm that they bring to the team, their value is different than just what they give on the pitch. Of course, they have to earn the place on the float before they can scream into the microphone. But I think that those things are important, and I think that that's where we've lost a lot of the atmosphere. I think there were a couple of really hard years where we're losing our players, we're losing our place on the table, we don't trust the coach, the manager's on his way out. All of these things are happening back to back. Kroenke's buying all the shares. We need to move forward, and we need to do it in a positive way, and they need to do everything that they can to make that happen.
I think with Mikel Arteta at the helm, I think he's going to give the youngsters a chance. If they're good enough,
I really hope he does.
A chance, because it's the lifeblood of Arsenal. It has been, youngsters, myself and some of the other players coming through, help save the club a lot of money. You get successful. But it looks like we've got a good crop of youngsters coming through right now. So they need a manager who's going to help them develop. And I hope Mikel Arteta's that guy.
I do too. I actually laughed when I was reading that Emery was taking credit for a lot of the development from these academy players. And I don't think that's where it came from. I'm going to say that the academy had a lot to do with it, and then them skipping right on through his coaching style probably helped that a lot. But yeah, I think you're right. I'm very excited about our young blood that's coming up, and I think we've got some really strong years ahead of us. I really, really do. I know we want that every year. I know we go into every season like super optimistic, and maybe in the US we're even more cheerleader about it. But it matters, and we live and breathe by this every weekend, and it makes or breaks your day, and sometimes your week. So I have to start off hoping for the best.
Well, Tiffany, it's been an absolute pleasure. Your optimism and your cheerleading, listen, it's great. And we all feel the same and passionate about the Arsenal, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really doesn't matter where you live. When you've got people in the California coast that are getting up at 4:00 in the morning to watch a match, I don't think you can question that supporters can live anywhere and really love their club.
Yeah, the commitment is undying. It doesn't die.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on. And listen, I'll reach out to you. I'll follow you anyway, but I'll follow you even a bit more now. Definitely. Thank you so much for coming on, Tiffany. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And
Thanks
love
so
to the
much.
family, love to all your Gooners.
Absolutely. And to you and yours. Hope everyone's staying safe.
Everyone is. Thank you, darling.
Great.
Bye. Bye.